Getting 15 A's is like driving in your old man's Mercedes. It's nice, it makes life easier, it's definitely preferable to not having one, and if you do have one, then you should be grateful for it. But in no way does it say a single thing about your worth, how hard you worked, your abilities, or even the quality and happiness of your life. And if I were to start flexing and thinking of myself as superior because I achieved those grades, then that would be the same as me thinking I'm superior because my dad bought me a Mercedes. Because in both cases, I'd be deriving validation from arbitrary and capricious grades, results, and objects that were never in my control. After this year's OA level results, there's been a huge outcry about how these grades were assigned. Words like lottery, random, and unmeritocratic have been used. And while it's no secret that this year Cambridge really messed up, I'm here to ask, when were these grades, these tests, these results ever a fair criteria to judge someone's abilities, hard work, and potential? This might be the first time that grades were given out so blatantly unfairly, but this definitely isn't the first time that grades themselves were unfair, because these grades are derived from results that have always depended on a variety of complex factors that are hardly, rarely, ever in the student's control. In this episode of Thinking Out Loud, we'll be taking a look at some of these factors and busting the myth that institutions like schools and the British Council would have you believe. The myth that grades represent hard work. Let's roll the intro. We're all told from a young age that there's a directly proportional relationship between hard work and success. So let's put this theory to the test. Let's take a look at the different factors that determine whether a student will succeed in their exams. I'm going to put 1 minute on the clock. And in that 1 minute, I'm going to try to get through as many different factors that I possibly can. Let's go. Let's start with your brain. Your brain has neurochemicals, which determine the way you act, your personality, and how you behave. Two of these chemicals are dopamine and serotonin, which affect things like mood, motivation, and determine your ability to even be able to get up and study for an exam. A scarcity or fault in the way these chemicals work can severely affect your personality and motivation, and this is determined entirely by genetic and environmental factors. Does your family have a history of depression? What was your parents' relationship? Did they fight? Were they supportive? Did your family create a conducive learning environment? Or were you born to a pair of alcoholics and drug junkies? What kind of nutrition did you receive as a kid? Were your parents able to afford healthy foods that would help your 4-year-old mind develop into a smart individual? Or were you part of the 45% of kids in Pakistan who suffer from stunted growth? 45%? What the? What kind of role models did you have as children? Did you have siblings to guide you in your studies? Did you have access to resources like books, the internet, television? Did the other kids in your neighborhood get good grades? Or did you grow up in a crime-infested slum where all your peers were doing weed and carrying pistols? How well did you do on the genetic lottery? Were people in your family intelligent? Do you suffer from migraines? Are your parents college graduates? Do they speak English? Did your parents have ADHD? Do you have ADHD? Do your parents even know what ADHD is? Did you get diagnosed for your attention problems? Or were you simply shamed for having them? Even though as much as 1 in every 10 person could potentially suffer from the disease. What kind of school did you go to? Could your parents afford private tuitions, afford to pay for sports and extracurriculars? What kind of familial responsibilities did you have? Did you have to earn by working at a tandoor while you went to school? Did you have to nurse a sick relative all day after school and thus weren't able to study? Were there other stresses in your life that prevented you from making grades the be-all, end-all of your existence? What about closer to the exam? Did someone break your heart? Did you get the coronavirus? Did a family member die and leave you shattered and broken, sinking in a sea of nihilism, unable to focus on revising chemistry? That was definitely over a minute, probably 2 minutes, but that just serves to prove the point, right? There's just so much stuff that goes into whether you will get a good grade or not. All this proves that your success can never ever be a reflection of your worth, because you are never in control of all the variables that determine your success in the first place. It's unfair to tell someone with bad grades that they're alike, that they failed, because in order to fail, someone has to have control over the results. And I don't even need to mention how badly that applies to this particular scenario in which the grades were literally just predicted. Parents shame and blame their kids when they get bad results, which is ironic because parents probably have a much bigger stake in determining whether their children get better grades than the children themselves. When a child fails an exam, it's not the child that failed. It's the child's parents that failed. It's the child's school that failed. It's the child's family that failed. Friends that failed. Society as a whole that failed. That failed to give that child the things that that child needed in order to be able to succeed. Regardless of what schools and society and parents would have you believe, life isn't a video game in which there are winners and losers. Because that would only be the case if we were all subject to the same circumstances. If we were all playing the same game on a level playing field. Exams and schools get away with this by saying that, look, these exams are fair because everyone's being asked the same question. But what these exams don't consider is the questions that life asks of all these students outside the exam hall. Educational institutes like Cambridge and British Council should acknowledge that exams have always inherently been unfair. But I'm not here to talk to policymakers. Na hi wo meri baat sunne hai. I want to talk to you, the students, the victims of this stupid, arbitrary system that makes us all feel like shit. Truth is that even if you get 15 A's or 20 A's or however many grades this dude got, life continues to throw curveballs and problems at you. And the challenges never stop. Happiness and success, despite what these schools would want us to believe, isn't in overcoming these challenges and being first and winning the video game of life. But it's learning to live with those challenges, those problems, and those shortcomings peacefully. Because if life really was a game in which it was possible for some to win, then 99.999% of the world, those that are stricken by poverty, racism, disability, mental illness, heart problems, would lose by default. At this point, you're probably wondering, Sanan, I mean, that's nice and all, but this kind of getting low-key nihilistic here. I don't know what your angle is, you know? While the understanding of our lack of agency and our helplessness can be intimidating, it can also be liberating. Looking at the world from this perspective allows us to break free from the one-dimensional boxes that we place ourselves and others into, that businesses, governments, schools, Cambridge put us in. We realize that people aren't as black and white, that we aren't just good or bad, that we aren't successes or failures, but rather we just are complex, confused, and as perfectly imperfect as the next. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, experience life as it is. Try your best, but realize that you're more than just a blank slate that could have done anything with its life. And that no matter what you achieve, no matter how badly you screw up or whatever grades you get, your life, your experiences are temporally and spatially unique. And there will literally never, ever be a person on this earth or on any earth like you. It's cheesy. It's cliched. It's definitely annoying coming from the douchebag who was lucky enough to get good grades, but it's also an undeniable fact of nature. So while it's hard, try to stop judging yourself for where you are and what you are, and just focus on living. Because despite what I've said, despite all the variables, all the unpredictability and chaos and madness that surrounds every moment of our fantastical existence on this absurd and mercurial blue marble, if there does exist choice, if there is such a thing as the ability to change our destiny and influence our life, then it doesn't exist in the past that we lament over, nor in the future that we're anxious about. It exists right here, right now, where it has always existed, and where it will always exist. So go and fucking live it.